A tropical ape with no fur, no fat under the skin, and no way to survive a single freezing night walked into the coldest era this planet has ever thrown at a human, and it walked out with the most powerful brain on Earth. Those two facts are not a coincidence. They're the same story. Because here's the thing almost nobody tells you about how ancient humans survived winter. They didn't survive it the way the animals around them did. And in the process of not dying, they became something the world had never seen before. They became us. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the cold your ancestors barely lived through is going to look less like a thing they endured and more like the thing that made them. This channel is about the hidden machinery behind being human, the forces that shaped you before you were ever born. If that's your kind of question, subscribe. We take them apart one at a time. Let's start with the body, because the body is the problem. You come from a warm place. Every human does. Our species spent most of its existence under an African sun, and our bodies never stopped believing that's where we live. No thick fur, no seal's layer of blubber, no trick to slow the heart and sleep the winter away like a bear. Strip a person down in real cold, and they have hours, not days. The core temperature falls, the thinking slows, and that's the end. Now look at what your ancestors were walking into. Around 20,000 years ago, at the worst of the last ice age, the planet ran about 6 degrees colder on average. That sounds small. It isn't. 6 degrees is the difference between London today and London under a wall of ice a kilometer thick. Whole continents went white, and the wind had nothing to stop it, and for months at a time, the food simply vanished. The animals out there were built for it. Mammoths had fur and fat. Cave bears hibernated. Reindeer just walked somewhere warmer. Every one of them met winter with a body that already had the answer. Humans had the wrong body, so they did something no animal had ever really done before. They met winter with a mind, and that difference is the whole story. Because every single thing your ancestors did to survive the cold was really the same move over and over. They took a problem their body couldn't solve, and they solved it with thought instead. And each time they did, that thought left a mark on the ground, in the bones, and eventually in us. Start with fire. Humans had been keeping fire for a very long time before the Ice Age, at least 400,000 years. And notice what fire actually is if you strip away the warmth. Fire is the first time a creature looked at a cold that hadn't arrived yet and prepared for it in advance. You gather the wood before you're cold. You keep the flame alive through the night for a danger that comes later. That is planning. That is a mind holding the future in its hands. And fire did something stranger still. The biologist Richard Wrangham argues that cooking is the reason our brains could grow so large in the first place. Cook the food, and you unlock calories your gut could never have pulled from it raw. We essentially traded stomach for skull. Fire didn't just keep us warm, it may have helped build the very organ that was learning to use it. Then there's the needle. Around 40,000 years ago, someone drilled a hole through a sliver of bone the width of a match, and it changed everything. A loose animal skin leaks heat through every gap, but a needle means thread. Thread means fitted clothing, sealed seams, closed cuffs, layers that trap warm air against the skin. At a burial site in Sungir in Russia, 34,000 years old, archaeologists found children laid to rest in garments sewn with thousands of carved ivory beads. That's not survival gear thrown together. That's a tailored, layered system. Nearly the same principle a modern mountaineer uses today. Look at what that tiny needle really proves. A brain that could picture a problem it wasn't currently having and build the solution ahead of time. Abstraction. The cold pulled it out of us. Then the house. Out on the frozen plains of what's now Ukraine, there were no caves and almost no trees, so people built shelters out of the only thing the land gave them. Mammoths. At a site called Medjurik, there are homes made from hundreds of mammoth bones. Skulls set into the earth as a foundation, tusks curved overhead into a frame. Some of these houses use the remains of over 150 animals. You cannot build that alone. You cannot hunt or gather those bones alone. That house is frozen proof of the deal winter forced every group to make, cooperate or die apart. The cold took people who might have survived as scattered individuals and welded them into something that could only survive together. And that's where the last piece comes in, the one that matters most. The winters were long and dark, 16 hours of night, Months trapped inside with the same handful of faces, the same fear, the knowledge that some of you might not see. Spring. That confinement should have torn groups apart. Instead, it did the opposite. It gave us the fire circle. Around those fires in the dark, people did the most human thing of all. They talked, they taught, they passed down what the old woman remembered from the terrible winter 15 years ago, which valley still held dear when everywhere else was empty. Knowledge stopped dying with the person who held it and started stacking across generations. We've found bone flutes 40,000 years old, cave walls painted with the animals people's lives depended on, music, story, memory made permanent. That is the birth of culture, and it happened in the season when there was nothing to do but sit in the dark together and keep each other's minds alive. So here's the reframe. Winter didn't just fail to kill your ancestors. It reached into them and pulled out planning and cooperation and language and imagination, and it kept the ones who had the most of it. The cold wasn't only a thing they survived. It was one of the great forges that shaped what a human being even is. Now, let me be honest with you, because the truth is more interesting than the clean version. Winter didn't invent the human brain from scratch. Our minds had been growing for 2 million years, most of it back in the warmth of Africa long before the ice. Plenty of what makes us clever has nothing to do with the cold at all. If someone tells you winter created human intelligence, they're overselling it. But here's what's true, and it's still remarkable. The ice age is the moment we can actually watch it happen. It's where the mind stops being a backup and becomes the whole survival strategy, where a naked, shivering animal beats the fur and the fat and the blubber, not with a better body, but with a better idea. The cold didn't hand us the brain. It's where we finally learned what the brain was for. And then a few thousand years ago, we won completely. We built walls and furnaces and thermostats. We took the deadliest thing our species ever faced and turned it into a thing we complain about on the walk to a warm car. But sit with the strange part. Every capacity winter carved into us, the planning, the cooperation, the fire circle need to gather and share and remember, was forged by pressure, by a world that would end you the moment you stopped thinking ahead and stopped needing each other. We've now built the first world in human history that asks for none of it. Warmth with no foresight, food with no season, whole winters passed without ever once needing another person to make it to spring. The cold made us, and for the first time we live somewhere that doesn't. So the next time the heat comes on before you've even noticed you were cold, remember what that comfort actually is. It's the trophy from a war we won so completely, we forgot we were ever fighting it. The question worth sitting with is quieter, and it's this: the mind the cold built. What happens to it now that nothing is left to forge it? If this changed how you see the warm room you're sitting in, share it with someone. And if you want more of these, subscribe.